My new book, Atlas of Unidentified Flying Objects, is now available to pre-order wherever books are sold, including Amazon, Barnes& Noble and Waterstones. Explore the UFO phenomenon through 34 cases from throughout the world, with accompanying pictures and maps in a beautiful hardback edition or download for your Kindle. Links available in the podcast description below.
You are now somewhere in the skies with your host, Ryan Sprague.
Back, corral it if it gets a little too unwieldy.
It never does. It never gets unwieldy with Dean Alioto. Welcome back to the show, my friend. We've been talking a little bit off air before I pushed record here. We have some thoughts on some other things in the UFO world, but before we get to that, welcome back. We're going to be talking all about the Alien Perspective Part 2 of your documentary series. So welcome back.
Happy to be back, Ryan. How you doing? How's Scotland?
Scotland is great, as always. Haunted as ever, as it were. And I'm excited to be back. I was in Canada for 2.5 months hunting ghosts. So now I came back to another ghost-ridden.
So you came back home to mount the ghost that you shot.
Exactly.
Hunting. Yeah.
I'm going to start a little collection here in the old flat, as they call it.
There's Casper. Right.
Exactly. I got Mary Queen of Scots somewhere up here. Yeah, it's going great, man. It's going great. But congratulations on part 2 of your documentary series releasing. I have a special place in my heart for part 2 for obvious reasons that we'll get to later on. But I'd love to kind of start with let's catch people up, Dean, if you don't mind. Part 1 of the Alien Perspective was huge. Like it exploded. It became like one of the top documentaries over on Apple and on Amazon and everything, and very well received. And I think for very good reason. It was different from everything we've ever seen when it comes to these UFO documentaries. And like you had teased in our interview about part 1, there was going to inevitably be a part 2 to this, and that just released somewhat recently. So bring us back, if you don't mind, to part 1 and how that was received by the public.
Sure. It was interesting because real quickly to encapsulate this, I started out a little bit of hubris, thinking, all right, I've done several documentaries. I know the UFO genre since I'm a kid. I'm going to bang this out in 9 months, and I will do 15 interviews and be done. And then, one interview, we start at NASA. They don't have the answers that I need. So then I have to go somewhere else. They don't have the answers that I'm, going to Cornell University. They don't have the answer. So it just becomes this kind of viral thing that I'm chasing. You almost feel like a detective, right? Because you've done enough of these shows. It's like, you're meeting in alleyways or, the only difference is I'm bringing my camera and saying, please, can I put you on camera while you, give me this? And so it ballooned into 60. I just finished my 67th interview, and 4 countries and 7 years. And so it became a 4-part documentary. And then 2 of the parts became so specific in an area of the phenomenon that I broke those off and made them their own. So those will be, the next one will be coming. That one's called The Experiencers. And the goal is to be the definitive movie on experiencers. And we've got fantastic people that I will fill you in later as we start to wrap up post. But the first 2 was basically the kind of all-encompassing look at the phenomenon, from NASA to the experiencers. My goal was to serve 2 masters here. One is the UFO community, who I love to death and who are very sharp and are on it and looking at every single thing that they can that's in this space and kicking the tires. So I have to show them something new and give them something that they haven't seen before, and also present it in a way that hasn't been done before. So that was the benchmark, the goals to hit. And then the other is I've got to take the, for lack of a better term, the UFO bi-curious who are curious about this, but don't know really that much. And so that's why we start at NASA and say, here's your foundation. Now we're going to take you deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And we're going to look at things like the extraterrestrial theory. Are they from the future? We're going to go to Oxford and we're going to talk to the guy who created the simulation reality hypothesis, that we're all living in a simulation. And there's, great credible points leading to that as well. So we're going to look at all this stuff. And so that's how this kind of came about. It just grabbed me and sucked me in. And so ultimately it became these two parts. The first one, which came out in January, was primarily looking at the question of where are they coming from? And we cover everything. We cover things that people haven't heard about as well. And we do have a couple things in it, case studies. Even though everyone is, we've kind of been talked to death about the Tic Tac case. I had never seen it other than when I see the footage of it, it looks like my childhood. It looks like a game of Atari's Pong.
Right.
You've got that little thing going back and forth. And I'm like, hearing these guys talk about, oh my God, and reacting to it is almost more visceral than seeing that. And so I got the guy, Arvid Steen, who did the Oscar-winning film Searching for Sugarman, the animation for that film, to do hand-drawn animation and to actually put us in the cockpit. So that hadn't been done before. And that was a great way to get into this from the alien's perspective. And because we also reverse the camera and we're looking at it from the Tic Tac's point of view on him, on Commander Fravor, and also on humanity. And so anyway, that's how, as a thesis, this is how it came about. And it led to me doing techniques and things that I've never done in this space before, which as an independent filmmaker who makes sci-fi and horror films, I'm excited to see that folded into that work as well. So both kind of, both formats, documentaries and fictional films, feed each other. So anyway, when 2 came out, I really wanted to make sure that we hit everything, that there was no stone unturned. And so that was like the goal for that, and to kind of look at ultimately why would they be visiting us, which is, I think, the most important question.
Exactly. And Dean, me as the guy who does look at this entire topic from the human perspective. I completely empathize with how you decided to do this, because ultimately, I think the sort of conclusion we always come to is we can try to understand the perspective of the alien, but at the end of the day, it always seems to come back on ourselves. And that's what I sort of took from this part 2. Not giving anything big away here, but like it is almost like putting that mirror up to ourselves and asking those big questions of, like you said, why? The first part of Alien Perspective to me kind of was like this question of where are they from? What could they be? And I love the different perspectives that you got on that. But this part 2, I think, really resonated with me because of the why. Why us? Why human beings? Why Earth? Why this galaxy? Why this universe are they coming to visit us? And I found it fascinating, kind of the different, I would say almost chapters or parts that you had in this, like these 3 big theories of why almost. And that was pretty cool. And then you had like a mix of scientists, you had a mix of, a couple theologians, you had kind of the more layman people like me and people who study UFOs, from a very not pedestrian level, but we're not the scientists. We're not the ones trying to understand these metals that have been found. We're not, we don't understand how physics works. So we're not the astronaut that you interviewed. And I want to talk about all these people specifically because the people in this part 2 just like astounded me. So yeah, I think let's start, I guess, kind of from the beginning of part 2. Now, the person you have kind of anchoring all of this in part 1 was Michio Kaku, but in part 2, I was very surprised to see someone who I have worked with in the past. I was quoted in her book. She wrote the foreword to my last book, and that was Dr. Diana Pasulka. And yeah, I was so happy to see that she was the one that was going to be sort of taking us on this journey in part two. So maybe tell us a little about Diana and why you decided to have her kind of be the one to bring us through the alien perspective.
Sure. I chose her for a few reasons. One is that she doesn't come at this from a straightforward linear UFOs to publishing to research and to being out there. She came at this from religious studies. And so religious studies is based on faith, which is also a big, huge component of ufology
Mhm.
and the phenomenon. And so the similarities, it was easier to have someone be able to talk to high strangeness that had seen it in something that generally is accepted by most people on the planet, which is, oh, well, this person is a saint and they had these abilities or this or that, or they saw this, the miracle of Fatima, right? And so having her come into it and be able to say, here are the parallels with this, and there's some crossover, and it might not be something of a religious biblical way. It could be this. And what if this, meaning UFOs, UAPs, what if that is biblical? So I thought that perspective that she was going to bring to it would take us up a notch. The other thing is the first one was Dr. Michio Kaku and a man. And there's enough white-haired men in this field that I felt like, where's the other half represented? And she is certainly at their caliber and in other ways, certain dynamics of the phenomenon, even more so. So it was important that we have that perspective as well if we were going to look at this. And so she was able to talk about things like downloads, which we can get into a little bit without giving too much away, from non-intelligent or non-human intelligence. So it was, and she's got a really fun angle on this. And she's, look, we're all armchair experts in this field.
Yeah.
No one is an expert. Zero. Even if it's a UFO case, you can't really be an expert unless you were there, unless you were able to get samples that stand up in courts and stuff, et cetera. And we've had certain material and stuff, but it's always been yes, but. And so for us, and I think that's by design, by the way, and I don't think it's by design by the government. I think it's possibly by design by whoever this non-human intelligence is. I think, one of the things that I always purport is that when we look at the phenomenon and we look at those who have witnessed and seen things and all the information that we've gotten thus far, it really is a teaser to a movie that everyone wants to see. Not just the people at the UFO conventions, the UFO community, but everyone wants to see that. It's also part of an existential crisis in a way. I don't know if it's the crisis aspect, but it is an existential question as much as, why am I here? What is the point of our existence? This is parallel to that. And I think it also might be key to answering that humanity's basic question.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I always think about that. Like the biggest questions in life, the biggest one, like you said, being, what am I doing here? We're kind of born into this insanity of, where am I? What's going on? Why am I breathing? Why am I talking? Why am I having feelings? Like it's all these human things that you experience day to day, yet you don't really know why or where it's all heading. And none of us know that answer until the inevitable. Even then, maybe we don't know the full answer. But
no, well, it's like you're a dramatist as well. You've written plays. The structure of how this plays out.
Yep.
Which is you don't know the end until the end. And so all we can do is we can guess. It's like an Agatha Christie novel. We can guess. I mean, Agatha was never a fan of hers when I was younger because she would all of a sudden say it was the butler, the butler's cousin who whatever. And it's like, where was the evidence to support that? So I could, backtrack, reverse engineer the clues. It was just, oh, by the way, it's this. And so in the meantime, you have these great colorful characters. Well, the UFO phenomenon is kind of like that, where we're guessing what the end game is. And the only one that's posited one, and again, this isn't his original idea, but he's honed it to such a science and a well thought thesis, is Dr. Michael Masters, with them possibly being us from the future. And, I'm reading right now the sequel to the book Sapien, Homo Deus. And he talks about, and this was written in 2016. So it's still kind of almost 10 years old, but yet it's really relevant and talks about what we are going to be doing, both genetically and as a society, and how AI is changing everything. And so we're at an apex right now where I feel like we can kind of actually project out, at least where we're going to end up. So it almost seems like, we're being observed. And whenever I don't know, the only way that I can really get a grip on this, a loose grip, is when I think about what we're going to do in the future. And in the future, when we were able to travel to distant stars, whether it's folding time or whatever, or remote viewing, it really comes down to what would we do? And so are we going to visit other planets? Are we going to try to do like the Prime Directive, which Star Trek breaks every episode? Are we going to look but don't touch type thing? I don't know. I think we're going to do some of, both. And so if we can survive ourselves, because we're still animals, but we're animals that now have, a gun with more than one bullet in it, and which is terrifying. So it's, can we emotionally evolve beyond to match the technology? So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent, but I just feel like where we're going when we see these craft, I think what we're seeing is a glimpse into the third act. And, we got to be grateful for that. I don't think the government controls the climax of this movie, man. I really don't. I think, everyone is, suspected or possibly co-opted by this. And so, all we can do is, again, I look at it like this. I look at this like it's a puzzle. And we have right now a couple corners of this puzzle of the phenomenon. And we have maybe a few pieces in the middle, but there's still a lot of pieces to put in there. And sometimes this is the stuff that really is annoying as hell, as someone who researches this heavily and has done countless interviews, is you'll have two pieces of the puzzle and you go, oh my God, it's so beautiful. Look how those fit together and everything. And you'll work on another part of it and you'll come back and you go, oh my God, they're not even fitting, not even close. I was jamming it in and I thought it fit perfectly.
Yep. The never ending puzzle. Yes. I love that, man. Okay. Well, you mentioned materials. Now that was a big part of part one, where we were following Kevin Knuth, who we've both had the pleasure of obviously interviewing, him being a big part of both parts of this documentary series. And he was in possession of these anomalous materials that you would personally have analyzed in part two. And, by the end, again, we won't give anything away. We did get the results. You left us with the cliffhanger in part one, like any good filmmaker, and we follow that journey as well. So is there anything you can touch on in that aspect of the Kevin Knuth journey of part two of the Alien Perspective?
Let's see. I'll tell you a funny anecdotal story. So when I heard about this material, and I'd seen material before on like the phenomenon, when I consulted on that, I had seen it close to a finished cut that was being worked on, and there were certain ways that I was looking at that and going, wow, what if this, what if that? And it really got my imagination going. And so when I got the material, I came into possession of it. I was on the East Coast. And I really wanted this to be analyzed by the top of the top of the top, and people who work in this field, not people who kind of work in different fields and stuff that are kind of adjacent, but really narrow it down. So I literally went with Deep Prasad. We crashed MIT on a Sunday afternoon. We actually have footage of this, and at some point I might do behind the scenes. I'll tell you how this went.
Okay.
It didn't go well.
Okay.
So literally, we waited for someone to leave the building where material science is, and we got in, and then somehow we were able to get up to the floor that we knew. We had reverse engineered what floor these guys were on, the ones that we wanted to talk to. And so we get there and we're moving down the hallway and we hear this music playing and we find the source of it. And it's this lab. And there's this guy there. And we're like, hey, man, we've got, this is going to sound crazy, batshit, but there is this material that we believe might be extraterrestrial and might be designed. And so we, present him with the material. And he's looking at it and he just seems kind of not getting it. And we're telling him again. And then finally he says to us, man, I don't think I can help you. I'm really hungover, so I'm not going to be of much help. So we left and said, all right, man, no worries. And we left before we got kicked out. And hopefully he didn't call security on us. But Deep and I were really kind of bummed that this was, the best of MIT and it was hungover. So anyway, then as this happens, when you're at this long enough, little miracles happen. And a buddy of mine said, hey, my landlord, who's an astrophysicist at Caltech, knows this guy, Professor Francois Tussaud, who is, he's a pioneer in this field in studying extraterrestrial material. That means comets, it means asteroids and metals in general. But this is his thing. If there's anyone who you would want to look at material like this would be the guy. So finally we settled on the home and I talked to Kevin. I said, look, this has been analyzed a few times and it's had anomalous results. So this would be the tiebreaker. So whatever happens, we're going to accept what that is. And things look promising, but just know that. And so we went into it committed to whatever it was going to be, we were going to tell, just so everyone knows that. And so, because for me, it's sometimes it's not just putting stuff on the plate to look at, it's taking things off the plate. I know this firsthand because the first film I made was the McPherson tape, which was believed to be a real footage of a family being abducted because it was shot like Blair Witch 10 years before Blair Witch. And I had to go on national TV and debunk my own film. So, because I don't want people having stuff on their plate. There's enough high strangeness and weirdness of the phenomenon for us to look at, not to be, misdirected, somewhere else. So anyway, So that was what we went in. I can tell you that. And so every precaution was taken for this. So I stand by 100% what the test results were. So does Kevin. And so, so that's what I can tell you.
All right. That is not the journey I expected that that landed us on the final conclusions there, but that is really interesting. I love that. Deep Prasad, you mentioned Deep. Now he played kind of a big part in this part two, featured several times. Can you tell us a little about who Deep is and maybe a little bit more about some of the other scientists in here? You had David Chalmers, who was who is a cognitive scientist, I believe it is.
And he's a philosopher
As well. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe tell us a little about Deep, if you don't mind.
Sure. So Deep is one of these incredible minds. He's someone who's fascinated by all different aspects, especially quantum computing, which is kind of his gateway into this. And he can talk to many things. James Fox had met him at Seoul last, I think, November in San Francisco, and was like, oh my God, what a mind this guy has. Very interesting angles that he looks at things. And for me, that's what I want. And so I'll go to anyone, if someone shines shoes and they have interesting, theories on life and stuff, that's just as valid as anyone else. And so Deep is able to talk in a very credible way with regards to like time travel and stuff, which is why I paired him with Michael Masters in the Alien Perspective Part 1, the first one, and then kind of comes back in Part 2 talking about why they might be visiting us, why they might be studying us, which is one of the 3 examples, not including the other possibilities section that we get into, which is really cool. And then we had, Dave Chalmers, man, an amazing mind out of NYU professor. He was hired by the producers of Matrix, the creators of the Matrix series, to look at if this is real, if we are in a simulation, what would this actually be like? And so he presented that, and he, along with professor out of Oxford, Nick Bostrom, who created the simulation reality hypothesis, both of them are tag teaming it in a section talking about what that would be like. And when they're talking about that would be another species that would have created us, they're not saying that figuratively. They're saying under the guise of a simulation reality, we are being controlled by aliens. And Nick Bostrom says it. I'm not saying figuratively, he literally says it. I'm saying literally, we are being controlled by aliens in this scenario. And here's the evidence to support that. So I remember talking to Dave Foley about it after, and it jacked him up. He was like convinced that we are, and still isn't convinced otherwise. But it's I mean, again, it's another piece of the puzzle, man. And everything has valid. And again, I do want to say that I'm presenting all these different aspects of this, of the reality, of our reality, and of their, the non-human intelligence reality. But it's done so it's kind of like a smorgasbord where you can say, okay, well, maybe this resonates with me more, or this. However, I don't discount the idea that it could be all of the above. And so in that case, all of these are relevant, and all these need to be considered and taken in. And as anyone who follows this is material. This is, research that I think is helpful to have in your toolbox going forward. When you talk to people, when you go to these conventions, when you talk to people online, when you're doing a podcast, all of us are, trying to solve this puzzle. And so, one of the pieces of that is Dave Chalmers. We also have Travis Taylor throwing down on, his book that he wrote about, how to avoid basically an invasion, how do you prepare for an invasion by, aliens. And, even he says this was kind of a joke. It was just to make it a side remark. And then he and his partner wrote this, book step by step, and he walks us through what that would be. And so, we cover kind of everything. And then we have, again, we come back to, not only do we have other experts in different aspects of this, we also come back to Jim Peniston from Rendlesham Forest.
Right.
And we have him, and he was gracious enough to let me use footage of him being very candid about his reaction to this and what he feels about his experience, which he's never said ever before, period. This is the first time. I won't give it away, but it was very candid, off color even. And that's what I'm looking for, because when I interview people, I don't want the beat. This happened, and this happened, and this happened, this happened, because I can read that. That's already been documented. I want to know, what did it feel like? What was the temperature of the situation? Were there any smells? Was there any thoughts that this was reminding you of something? In other words, I want to use all of your senses. I want to pull in all that, but mostly I want to take you back to that moment. I don't want you to be a stenographer. I want you to be someone who's saying, here I am in the moment. And when I talked to Peniston, he went into a fugue state, man. I go, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, I'm there. And I said, good. All right, let's get that. And he says, no, Dean, I am there. I can tell you what the patterns of the bark look like on the tree to my right, the first tree. I can tell you that there's dew on the branches. I can tell you the temperatures, this and that. He says, I have millions of memories in my life. None of them do I remember anything like this. And so, that to me is gold. That to me is taking us who wish that we could be there. It was a great movie called it's a Stephen King novel called The Dead Zone, and Christopher Walken is in it. And he touches something and he goes back and he's actually there. And in this case, they're tracking a serial killer. And he touches a glove and boom, he's at this gazebo in the snow. And it's this visceral thing where he's able to walk around it. And so my goal in any time I do a documentary is to do that, to be able to take you back to that moment and have you look at it in a way that hasn't been ever looked at before.
I love that. You're like the dead zone of ufology. I love that. I love it, man.
Christopher Walken, the ice is going to break.
Good impression. Good impression. Hey guys, Ryan Sprague here, and I want to tell you all about an exciting event that I'm going to be speaking at in Hexham, England on August 9th. It's called Cosmic Frequencies. Cosmic Frequencies is going to be an unforgettable evening of mind-expanding science, live cosmic funk music, and of course, UFOs. The event is bringing together leading voices from the frontiers of space exploration, UFO research, and science communication. Curated by the SKX Funkanauts Band in collaboration with Kielder Observatory, this immersive event features powerful live music interwoven with talks from astrophysicist and SETI researcher Dr. Beatrice Villarreal, representative of the Kielder Observatory Dan Pye, Emmy-nominated filmmaker and former executive producer for the BBC, Steve Crabtree, and yours truly, talking all about the human side of UFO experiences. With stunning celestial visuals and a special panel discussion and Q&A, this evening celebrates the intersection of art, science, and curiosity, and a journey through space, sound, and the unknown. There will also be a special VIP meet and greet after the talks. Cosmic Frequencies is being held at the Forum Cinema in Hexham, England. Join us on August 9th. For more information and to purchase your tickets, visit cosmicfrequencies.org. Once again, that's cosmicfrequencies.org. And let's get funky! You mentioned Dave Foley. Now, of course, me being, a quote unquote artist myself, a writer, I really enjoyed this aspect of part two. You had Dave Foley, you had Alan Tudyk as well. You even had an astronaut. But what was cool, Dean, again, like you find this unique way with everyone that you have in the film. She wasn't just an astronaut. She was in space because of her art. Like that was literally part of her mission, was to go to space because she was an artist. And that like blew my mind. When you can merge science with art, I am a firm believer that not that artists are more in tune with whatever these phenomena may be, but they have this way of interpreting it as all art is and expressing it out to the world. And I do feel that sometimes artists, as more empathetic people, that may be a good vessel for an alien species to go through. So you did have the perspectives of Dave Foley, who had some very profound things to say, Alan Tudyk as well, and our astronaut, who was Cian Proctor. So tell us a little about that side of all of it, if you don't mind.
Sure. So there's a lot of astronauts, people that have gone into space. Now it's Katy Perry who's gone into space.
Yep.
Yeah. So the fact that she was chosen for her unique perspective, which hadn't been done before, bringing an artist. Everyone's talented, in an artistic way, to a degree, but she's a real deal. She's a poet and a painter. And so to have her perspective, she was the only astronaut that I wanted to go after. Mm-hmm. And ironically, I know someone who had worked with her years ago. And so it took a while. All of these interviews, it takes a while. You just don't ring out, these people and say, hey, I'm going to be, in your neck of the woods this time. It's like, who is this person? And you have to triangulate it where you get recommended by several people in order to get them. But anyway, she came at it with being wide open and taking it in at an energetic level, which I thought was crucial. And so her perspective on it was beautiful. It was just amazing, looking down at the planet. And, when you look down at the planet, you don't see borders.
Yeah.
You don't see walls. You don't see anything. You see that we're all here on this planet, trying to figure stuff out. But you see this big, beautiful marble. And you're able to kind of take all of that in and actually step outside and look at it from what would be the alien's perspective, looking down on our planet. And so that is invaluable, getting that opinion. And so she had great insights that she shared with us, which was, fantastic. And Alan Tudyk, yeah, he's great. He was in Star Wars, Rogue One, and he's got the series called Alien Resident or Resident Alien. And he's been in tons of things. Just a great mind. There was this one bit. I mean, I was in tears. I was laughing so hard. We put a couple of his jokes in there, but he had one thing where he went off on a tangent about saying how he wants to hook up with the aliens and help them. He's saying, look, the bald look is good. And he says, I'm not saying don't go with that, but I'm saying if you wanted something different, I know a guy in New York who does hair plugs, and it might be just another look, just another option. And maybe in return, everyone says that your skin is just beautiful, and whatever the collagen that you're using, maybe there's alien collagen that we could do a barter thing. I mean, I'm not doing a service, but just had me in tears. Because one of the things I really wanted to bring, and the reason why I went after him specifically, what I wanted to bring to these documentaries is so many of them, because there are serious, cases, I understand, are very straight, kind of unwielding in their the hypothesis or theories or instances that they're showing. And so I wanted to bring levity to this because life has levity in it. Right. So I wanted to have moments like in part 1, when Michael Masters is doing his own introduction and he completely forgets to say where he's studying, where he's a professor at. And he says, can we back up and grab? So that's in there. I have NASA when I asked them in part 1, hey, what do you do? What's the first thing that you guys do when you find that planet that has like a Dyson sphere, or it has, the light grid and everything. And it's clear as bell that this is an advanced civilization that has technology. What's the next plan? What's the next step? And she just started getting the giggles and said, I don't know. We don't have a plan. She's like, that's funny. We keep looking at the next flagship, the James Webb telescope and whatever, but we don't have an end game. So that I found curious. So you'll find moments all through part 1 and part 2 in this. And even when the stuff that we have with them, you and MJ Benias and Sarah Scholes, there's levity, all throughout while we're hitting these, hopefully new areas of research that hasn't been studied.
Right. And, I am extremely honored and appreciative that you asked me to be a part of this like kind of small panel discussion that took place in the film. It was so cool. Like it's where I work best, and it felt like a podcast. And like you mentioned, you had MJ Benias, who works with the debrief. He comes from a philosophical background. You had Sarah Scholes, who is has written a book about the entire UFO topic as well. Is a bit more on the skeptical side, which I think is very important. You also had another skeptic, Seth Shostak, in the film as well, which I thought was really cool because, again,
which was ironic
perspectives.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Which was ironic because, and I know that there's a love hate with him, or maybe a like hate with him, but he defends the idea of a species coming that they would most likely not be here for worldwide destruction. And so you have him actually advocating for things that you would think maybe he wouldn't. And so that was that was unique. But you have to look at everyone's opinion, man. You can't just go in there. It's like, if you're going to go into surgery, do you want to go to a bunch of, yes people? Oh yeah, sure. We got that covered. We got that covered. Or somebody's going to say, hold on. I would recommend you do laparoscopic surgery instead of just slicing open the chest and cracking the ribs. I think there's a less invasive way. You want someone who's going to tell you, here are your odds and everything. And so it's important to listen to those, and whether they're able to convince us or not is up to them. But we are going to get all those different, voices as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I think there is no way we will ever answer the why unless we get the thoughts and insights of every type of person. You had podcasters in there. Martin Willis had one of the most profound questions I've ever heard. And he said, I think my question for them would be, what question should we be asking? And I was like, damn, Martin coming in with a mic drop. I don't want to give anything else away in the film, but that one did really stick with me, is, are we even asking the right questions? And I think that's a big part of it too. And you do ask those questions, like, are they here to help us? Are they here to harm us? Are we harming ourselves enough that we are sending out this cosmic cry for help almost in some ways? And yeah, I love it, man. I love how you decided to do the part 2 and ask a very scary question of why would we be visited? And while scary, it can also be beautiful. It can be heartfelt. It can be terrifying. It can be funny even. I mean, again, you had Dave Foley in there joking around, Alan Tudyk as well. And yeah, you hit every human side of this that you possibly could while making a film about the alien perspective. And that's what I really loved about it. Now, I know you did have a premiere recently as well of the film at it was Contact in the Desert. Am I correct?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. How did that go? How was it received, part 2?
I had never been to Contact in the Desert before. I'd certainly heard about it over the years. And I had a premiere screening of the first one, the Alien Perspective. And one of the people that were there, she said, this needs to get to Ron, who runs Contact in the Desert. And I said, oh yeah, that'd be great. And so she got it to him, and he flipped out over it. Ron gets hundreds of documentaries a year that he's got to look at. It's too overwhelming for him. And so at first he's like, all right, I'll take a look at the trailer on my phone. And she was like, Judy was like, no. You got to watch it on the big screen. He goes, all right, I'll watch it on my computer. And she's like, I'm coming over right now, and you're going to watch it on your TV. So he watches the first one and was sufficiently enticed to watch the second one, and saw the second one. He said, okay, actually, no, I didn't show him this. I showed him the trailer. Sorry, the trailer for the second one. And he's like, we're gonna carve out late in our schedule here. We're carving out the world premiere for you. We're gonna make space for you, and we're gonna put you on a couple panels. And Ron is a card-carrying smartass like me, so we hit it off. And I got to tell you, it was one of the best, if not the best, convention I've been to, simply because, my favorite festival has been convention has been the International UFO Congress Convention, and this was its own, like, a great counterpart to that. But what I really loved about this was, I'm in the lobby, I'm hanging out with people, talking with other fellow UFO researchers, Richard Dolan. There's just too many of them. And also people that aren't just in that aspect of the phenomenon, but also Rich Martini, who does the flip side, which is, life after death, or life in between lives, reincarnation and stuff. And so you have this great, amazing potpourri of people who are studying all areas of the paranormal. And I'm up until 4 a.m., like almost every night. So it was a great way to also meet. Also, super important is the people who come to this, who are fantastic. I mean, I go to horror conventions, film festivals, stuff like that because of my other films, and they're terrific people. And these guys are just as terrific, have fantastic questions. And so it's a great way to kind of reach the audience that you're actually trying to reach and say, hey, what do you think? And get notes and feedback and stuff like that. So anyway, I really, really enjoyed that. And the world premiere there was a blast. It played really well. We had the actor Thomas Jane from The Expanse and Punisher moderated. And on the panel was, along with me, was my buddy Paul Hynek, who's also in the doc. We actually look at the Socorro, New Mexico case with actual audio from Lonnie Zamora underneath amazing world-class hand-drawn animation. So we see it again in a way that we haven't seen before. And then also Greg Bishop, who is another insanely brilliant mind who, like you said, kind of looks at this as, what does this say, our pursuit of this, what does this say about our pursuit of getting to know who we are and how we're ultimately pursuing ourselves and understanding ourselves. And so, it was a great turnout. And then online, everything went, then from there, it kind of caught fire. And so the reaction has been really, really positive. We have a couple mic drops in the movie, as you know, without giving them away, kind of giving one away. There's a kind of a UFO figure, ufologist, someone who has been claiming this certain case or this certain thing is real, having to do with this big conspiracy, and everyone is going to know who this guy is when you see him. And it was discovered that this guy was actually lying the whole time, which is kind of freaking some people out and having them reframe their, what they have on their plate and maybe take it off. But we have photographic evidence that this was all faked. His main evidence for this was completely fake. And so I was actually kind of nervous when we showed it at the at Contact, because I thought that the audience was going to, hang me up and say, how dare you do this and blah, blah, blah. And instead, they were applauding, because they were like, thank you for letting us know that this isn't real, and it's okay. Sometimes it isn't, but that we don't have to, go down that rabbit hole anymore. And so, and they also appreciated me being honest and not being afraid to say, hey, here's some news that's not great, but this is relevant to the big picture. And so, and they were encouraged. There was a Q&A after that Thomas moderated, and they said, please continue doing that. Let us know when, there are things that don't, fully pan out. And don't just say, here is this case and I'm going to live and die on this, And so, and I had followed him as well when I was, younger. I was like, wow, this is an amazing case. And so it's kind of like, okay, there's no Santa Claus in that case, but there's still enough plenty of high strangeness and stuff going on that we can continue munching on.
Exactly. Yes. Like you said, pulling things off the table will only bolster the more credible stuff moving forward. And that's what we need.
Especially how we're perceived by the general public, who maybe doesn't have as much an interest in this. That perception is super critical for us taking this to the next stage. So,
yeah. Now, you mentioned cases, Dean, to kind of wrap things up, to bring things current. There were some claims recently about a case that you covered in part 1, the Tic Tac event. Some pretty bold claims that have been made recently that the Tic Tac may have possibly been man-made technology. Now, I have talked about it ad nauseum on the show in the past couple weeks, so I will not, put our audience through that. But I know you've probably been following the news as well. So what do you think of the possibility that one of the cases you covered in part 1 that had a dramatic effect on those involved with that case, that what they may have been dealing with was some sort of top secret human-made technology?
Usually when I'm going to comment on a case, especially in my documentaries, I've spent enough time in it that I kind of feel like I can go off and write a book about it, or have enough to say or feel like, at least I can present something that maybe isn't bulletproof, but is close to that. I haven't done as much research because a lot of this stuff is coming out, through Ross. And I know Ross, and we were on a panel together. I've been on Reality Check before. And so I know, he's someone who's going to be, drilling down, I assume, in getting us more, even more information, because I don't feel like I've really gone down that rabbit hole, been slammed with delivering these movies and stuff. I intend to do that probably next week or the week after. My feeling with regards to that, what he's being told, I've heard this before with regards to that the Tic Tac is, man-made. In fact, everyone likes to say it's man-made. Roswell, that was man-made. It's like a catch-all thing. The thing that I'm having trouble getting my brain around, and it's just maybe my lack of imagination in that, is the idea that we in 2004, 5, and years later, had this technology, including decades before, because this isn't the first time that a propane or Tic Tac looking object has been seen moving around at hypersonic speeds and has been attributed to the UFO phenomenon. And so the idea that in this case it was man-made would mean that we would have had to have reverse engineered this existing technology that has been witnessed for decades, maybe centuries. And so I'm not sure how we would do that. The fact that it's so big, it's described as being 40 feet in diameter. Why do you need all that space? If you're able to move at supersonic speeds, smaller the better. If that's just the intent of this thing, if there isn't something in it, and whoever's piloting it isn't in it. I do find it interesting, and I think Ross talks about this. I find it interesting that Fravor himself calls it sometimes. It turned, it looked at me, and then it went up and did a counter movement to what I was doing. So he's given it an identity. He's not saying the craft then pivoted towards me. He says it turned and looked at me. That's kind of telling. That was his first, reaction to this. And without fail, like I've worked on crime shows for many years. And whenever I'm interviewing someone, I do the interview and then I make a note of all the hot questions that he answered, and I go back, or she, and I go back and I ask the same ones to see if there is consistency. And sometimes there isn't. I know, okay, this person is making this up on the fly. He doesn't. Every single interview, it's the same thing. So anyway, I feel like, if we do have that technology, why haven't we used it in a war type situation? Because we were certainly still in the Middle East. In Afghanistan, we're still dealing with that. If mankind has it, how come Putin hasn't, attached a missile to it and gone over to the Ukraine and dropped it? Chekhov, who says, if you're going to show the gun in the first act, you got to use it in the third. Right. And so we haven't used it in that way. So what is that technology for? And this is all separate from the idea that we're using this technology against our own people. Even though we're not firing on them, we are in a skirmish situation with them. And so when they're jamming the radar, it displayed so many different levels of technology that I go, well, why don't we just have that capability in F-16, F-18s, China's Dragon, I think it's called, their fighter. Why hasn't that been, part of that as well? So, it's something that I'm watching, that I intend on watching even closer. But, if this is happening, there's probably a really good, possibility that Ross will get to the bottom of it. It's just that, I know that we're all still kicking the tires on that possibility. And there's a lot of tires.
Yeah, too many tires to count, man. It's Michelin man over here for sure. Well, to kind of wrap things up, Dean, the big question in this one is why. And for you personally, having now spent 7 years of your life on this project, like you said, spanned almost a decade, spanned different countries, hundreds and hundreds of interviews. Why do you think they have possibly made contact? And if you don't think they've made contact, personally, do you think we ever will?
I have 4 words that I use to describe why they're visiting us. In-N-Out Burger. I have trouble believing that there's a better burger, fast food burger, in the universe. So it makes sense. It's always made sense to me because of that. Now, someone might say, well, In-N-Out hasn't been around forever, and this has been reported forever. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. So that kind of shoots that theory. Okay, so forget about that. Forget about that. I don't know what you're talking about. No, I think that it's curiosity, which we talk about in the documentary, man. It's really, if you are an intelligent species, a component of not just being intelligent, but being advanced, having advanced intelligence has to do with curiosity. Everything comes from that. You know, you look at fire, the first time we saw fire, and they say that fire wasn't just created once and everyone went, oh my God, we now have this thing. Tell the village next door, check this shit out. Doesn't happen. It was created or invented, and maybe someone got it from a lightning strike and they kept it going, but then it went away. So we had it and then we lost it and had it, lost it. It happened several times. And so I feel like we are constantly looking for ways to study reality. And so I think that goes cross species. I think that these species, whether they're coming from another planet, the future, another dimension, I think that they're going to be doing this because they want to be able to understand life. Ultimately, it's to understand our maker, right? And it doesn't have to be some guy with a beard, you know, in the Sistine Chapel. It can be a life force. It can be whatever it is. I mean, we all probably have a hand in creating reality anyway. You know, if you talk to Rich Martini, he talks about how we've all agreed to do this, like Buddhism, you know, reincarnation. We've all agreed to come here and do this. And so if we're agreeing to do this, why? And maybe the why is that we are evolving and we are learning. The only problem is, and this is only isolated to where we are in history, separate from our complete past, is we are doing things where we have technology that we're not mature enough to handle. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the proliferation of the hydrogen bomb and all these nuclear weapons and, you know, all this other stuff that we don't even know about. I'm talking about what we're doing with our resources. And that when I talk to people in the UFO community, they you know, I went to Shag Harbor and I asked people, you know, what do they want from disclosure? What is that? And a component of that was, I really want to have them show up and give us technology to help our planet. And I said, okay, isn't that kind of like saying, I really want a parent to come in and clean my room? Because I know I messed it up and it was me. This is too overwhelming. I don't know how to fix it up, you know, clean it up. No, we have to clean up our own mess, because then they're going to have to come back and clean it up again. We need to figure that out. And right now, the only thing that matters, literally the only thing that matters in our existence, separate from the phenomenon, is how do we keep our planet? How do we keep the species, not just us, on our planet? Since the dawn of man, or since the dawn of life on this planet, 99% of the animals and the creatures on this planet are extinct. 99, just hold on to that, 99%. So what we're dealing with is a small fraction of what has remained. I don't feel that you can look at the phenomenon and the aliens, you know, the visitors, the NHIs. I don't think that they're saying this just because it's a great icebreaker. Is for them to say, your technology isn't helping you. These are the two messages that repeat over and over. Technology is not helping you, and you're screwing up your planet. And so what can we do about that? Well, what we can do about it is we can, you know, reach out to people who are lawmakers, who are doing this and champion that. that if that is the message, if you're in the UFO phenomenon or field, let's say, how can you really be a member of that community and what we're trying to do, which is bring about disclosure and stuff, without also being pro-planet, period.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm an alien coming to visit us and I see that this planet can't even take care of itself, how am I going to eventually let them join the Galactic Federation, if you will?
Yeah.
And so for me, there's sometimes a little bipolarness that the community can have with regards to that we all need to be in sync, because it's coming. We're seeing it. Texas, this is on the heels of this Texas flood that came that killed several people, including a whole bunch of young girls at this camp. I mean, that's not normal, that type of weather vengeance. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I've gone too far on the soapbox, but it was the one thing that I learned over the 7 years was this is paramount. This is messaging that has been coming to us. So there are certain bits of communications going between us and the NHIs, and that is one of them. And it's super important. So I feel like I don't care about Mars. I don't care that we're going to terraform it. We're going to do this and that. What about this planet? If we can get this all golden, right? Get it terrific. I feel like we're one step closer to disclosure. I really believe that. We need to show a demonstration that we're ready for that. And we are. That's the good news, is that there's enough of us who are considering this. And, when you go to the UFO convention, you look at all these people, they can handle disclosure. And a lot of them, like you say, in one of your bites in the Alien Perspective Part 2, is for, the hundreds, thousands of people that are experiencers, they've had disclosure. And we need to listen to them, and we need to give them a seat at the table.
Yeah, and I stand by that until today. Yeah, so many good points, Dean. I mean, the parent could tell you to clean the room, but it's up to you to clean the room, or else you're never going to learn. And I think, like you said, it's an evolution in thought, and it's the only way we're going to save this one planet we've been given. And yeah, like you said, I don't think any alien species would want anything to do with us if we're the ones constantly destroying our bedroom instead of cleaning it up and inviting them in to come play video games with us, right? So
Right.
yeah, I love it, man. I love the film really left an imprint on me, especially part 2. So of course, last obvious question: what comes next with the Alien Perspective? You had mentioned a possible film, and where can we find the Alien Perspective Part 2?
Sure. The Alien Perspective Part 2 is exclusively on Apple TV, as well as YouTube, Google Play. YouTube and Google Play. I think they're might be both the same thing. But now there's a reason why it's available exclusively on these and not on Amazon. Amazon has been editorializing their UFO content. So for all of you that like watching UFO documentaries, you are going to get reduced down to maybe 10%, if that, of UFO content. We're not sure exactly what's going on, but there are several documentaries that are being turned down by documentary filmmakers that I know. And in fact, part 2 was turned down for that very reason, that, that it was about UFOs. And we had, UFO on the cover. And so the app for the Apple TV is free. A lot of TVs come with it. You just see it when you're scrolling through. You see that you've got Amazon, Netflix, et cetera, and then you'll see Apple, and you click on that, you download the app. That it may already be on your TV, and then you can rent it and buy it like everything else. So a pivot has to happen until that goes away. But right now there's some weird, I don't know what to call it, boycott that Amazon is doing. It's the strangest thing. And so the other 2 documentaries that I have, one is The Experiencers, and then the very last one that I'm doing is a documentary on Dr. John Mack. Those I'm going to streaming services directly, so it may not be even on TVOD. But right now, to see part 2 and to figure out the cliffhanger, see the cliffhanger, you need to go to Apple TV. And you can go to actually my website that we have, and that'll link you to all these. Part 1, which is on Amazon still, and the other ones, and that's alienperspectivemovie.com, Alien Perspective Movie. And so going forward, it's finishing these other documentaries. I'll tell you that the one with the experiencers is crazy. We have 2 sisters a year apart. One's an artist and one is full on business, and both of them have had strange experiences in their childhood. And we discover real time what actually happened. And so that's all caught on camera. It's insane. That alone was too much to even try to put in to its, to be fashioned into the Alien Perspective series. So anyway, and the John Mack one, I'm really partial to, because I've been working on that for a long time. And we have things that people haven't seen before about John Mack. And so that's going to keep me busy. It's funny. I'm looking at the date here. It's July 15th, and you and we had met before Alien Con, but we went to Alien Con. I remember you crashed out on my couch.
Yeah.
And I did my first 2 interviews for the Alien Perspective. It was 2018, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was Travis Taylor and Nick Pope. Those were the first 2 documentary interviews that I did. And they were one of the 15 interviews that I was going to do. Ha, ha, ha. And I just interviewed Diana Hennessy Powell for the John Mack doc. She's my 67th interview. And I may have 1 or 2 more. I might get to 70. I'm exhausted, man.
Well,
I need to go back to making independent films. It's a lot easier. I'll tell you that much.
Nope. We've pulled you in, man. There's no getting out. It's your damn fault for making the McPherson tape. I'll tell you that much.
It is. Yeah.
But I'm sure it has been a hell of a journey since then, man. And again, guys, like, it is worth the pivot to go to Apple or wherever you have to go to watch part 2. So we'll put links in the show notes, Dean, to get to the movie some way, somehow, for everybody. And I can't wait for everything you got going on. And I got to thank you once again for coming on Somewhere in the Skies today.
Thank you, brother. Happy to be back.
Somewhere in the Skies is part of the Somewhere podcast universe. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To learn more about all of our shows, visit thespu.com.